Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast. And I'm very excited. I have a special guest here. His name is Scott Lockwood, and we are at Windsor Chapel Funeral Home. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks, Ruth Ann. It's great to be with you today.
I'm really excited for this because we have a lot of the boomer generation out there, and they are either kind of going into nursing homes or, passing, unfortunately, and then their family, their kids are looking for information. And as a realtor, I'm getting these questions all the time. What do I do?
Right,
How do I go about it? So I'm so glad that you decided to join me today and give us a bunch of information.
Yeah.
Before we start,
great.
can you tell me a little bit about Windsor Funeral, the chapel, and kind of what you guys do? And you have a couple of locations. It's not just this Dougal one that we're on.
Yeah, that's right. So we're at Windsor Chapel South, which is on Dougal Avenue. It's actually Windsor's most newest, most modern funeral home. It opened in 2017. But Windsor Chapel does have two other locations, one on Tecumseh Road, just across from Met Hospital, and one on the east end, on the corner of Banwell and Tecumseh. And we're very proud of our three locations. And Ruth Ann, Windsor Chapel, believe it or not, over 120 years old. 1904 is when the funeral home started. Having served literally generations of families here in Windsor and Essex County.
So are you one of the oldest standing homes in the area?
We definitely are, yes. And, we're very proud of that. We're proud of our legacy and history. Yeah. It really speaks to the generations of trusted service. And yet at the same time, we don't rest on the laurels of our history, right? Funeral service, like any other industry, believe it or not, changes dramatically over time when it comes to options and service types. And we really pride ourselves on changing with the times in the opportunities we offer to families for memorialization and celebrations of life.
Yeah, and that's really wonderful to hear because, especially since COVID changed a lot of things, a lot of the ways that we just do life on a regular now, right?
It sure did, yes.
So being able to keep up with the times so that you are able to continue to offer people, especially at some of the most difficult times in their life, like the solace that they need, the comfort that they need, like that's so wonderful.
It really is. And when we talk about what we do, well, I'm a funeral director, and of course I work at a funeral home. And so, what do we do? Don't we do funerals? Well, yes, we do. But, I look at it as our team, our funeral directors, our staff, really what we do is we have this sacred honor of being invited into the midst of a family's life right when they're going through what I call the most significant of all of life's transition, that being the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
Or when an individual or a couple is at a stage in their life where they're considering, their end of life planning as a part of their overall estate planning. And so we're here to provide direction, a sense of navigation to help their children navigate those decisions and options.
And that's wonderful because, like I said, we do see a lot of this happening, right? And the kids are also, where do I go from here? What happens from here? And parents as well, when you're coming in together and, you've had a will, but now you actually have to plan your funeral, which is something that a lot of people are doing now. And we'll get into that in a little bit more in the podcast, but definitely pre-planning is something that is happening more and more and more. And my grandma just passed away about a year ago, and my mom was in charge of everything and stuff like that, right? And when she was going through the process, she said at the end of it, I never thought about actually paying for our funeral and pre-planning our funeral and all that stuff. She's like, but it's done now, so you don't have to worry about it because she was so stressed out,
Yeah.
And it is a big deal.
It is, and I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but that's one of the most significant advantages of pre-planning or advanced planning is the idea of ensuring that everything's in order, that decisions have been made ahead of time, ahead of need, maybe perhaps in a less emotionally charged time. And oftentimes we hear, especially for, parents who are at a stage in their life where they're making decisions about estate planning, wills, powers of attorney, having those conversations with their children, it allows also that, I see it as a gift, providing that peace of mind, that their wishes are known, so when the time comes, the children are able to move forward confidently, knowing that they're simply following through with what mom and dad's wishes were, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that gives people a lot of comfort, right? I mean, in anything in life, if you know the direction that you're moving in, that makes everything easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your programs that you have. You have an event coming up in April, which is very exciting. So what is coming up in April?
Well, we're very proud of the fact that as a part of our involvement in the community in Windsor-Essex County, we want to do all that we can to help educate our community on all things related to end-of-life planning. And when we think about it, a lot of folks, when they think about estate planning, it's all about getting things in order, right? It's about making sure that the wills are in place, making sure, the finances are in place, meeting with financial advisors. Perhaps those who are advanced in age are maybe considering things like powers of attorney for health and for finance. And oftentimes, Ruth Ann, one of the missing pieces around that conversation so often is end-of-life planning.
Yeah.
And I think probably because, let's be honest, it's a bit of a difficult subject to talk about. I know even for my own parents who are, they're in their late 70s, they're relatively good health, but every now and then I speak with them about, well, what are their end of life wishes, and sometimes it's, we don't want to talk about that right now, right? But these become important discussions so that we can know and be on the same page and understand that when that time does come, that we're able to follow through with clarity of what their wishes were. And so one of the things we do quite often in the community is we provide education seminars, lunch and learns, where we, whether we host them here at the funeral home, or often we are invited guests in the community for different organizations, providing presentations on end-of-life planning, the advantages of pre-planning, planning ahead, and what that process looks like. And so, next month on Tuesday, May 26th, here at Windsor Chapel South, we're going to be hosting an event called Living with Legacy in Mind,
nice.
which is all about pre-planning. And when you think about it, it makes sense, in my opinion, if the more we prepare in advance for anything in life, the more free we are to live in such a way where we know things are in order and prepared for, and it provides a peace of mind. And so we're going to be talking about that, and you can check that out on our website, windsorchapel.com, and all the information will be there.
Perfect. And you have a beautiful, beautiful facility here. We're actually in the cafeteria area. You can't see it. We're at the fireplace, but this is a great location.
Yeah. We're very proud of this location. Like I said, it's Windsor's newest funeral home, 2017 when we opened our doors. And a lot of times people that come through our doors will say, boy, this doesn't feel like a funeral home. Sometimes we have in our mind, from years past, the old funeral parlor and what sort of doom and gloom and drab and quiet. And here at this location, it's very bright, very spacious, very welcoming. In fact, one of the jokes around here sometimes is we're right beside a hotel.
Yes.
And it's not uncommon, believe it or not, Ruth Ann, where we will have people come through our front doors, luggage in hand, and they will say, we're here to check in. And we say, well, no, we don't think so. But that's happened more than a few times. And they say, oh, it just looks so beautiful in here. So that's been funny from time to time.
It does give the hotel vibes. And when I was here just recently for a friend's parents' funeral, and when I looked it up, I thought, isn't that the hotel? And then when I got here, I'm like, oh no, it's beside the hotel. But
driveways are close.
They're very, very close. Yes. But you know what? That's nice too, location-wise, because if you have a lot of out-of-town family coming, they can stay right next door.
Absolutely, very, very accessible, this location, as all of our locations are, and so we're very proud of that. And I should also say that Windsor Chapel, we have our 3 locations here in Windsor. We have that tremendous legacy and history, and also it should be noted that we are a part of the Arbor Memorial family, and Arbor Memorial is actually Canada's largest family-owned provider of funeral and cemetery services, across the country, over 120 funeral homes, over 50 cemeteries. And so we're very proud that we're a part of the Arbor Memorial family. And so what that means here in Windsor-Essex is it's not just our 3 Windsor Chapel locations, but we actually have a total of 7 funeral home locations and 2 cemeteries as well. And so I always say that when it comes down to it, we have something that meets every individual family's needs, wants, wishes, whether that's location, convenience, budget, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so we're very proud of that fact. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're one of the oldest and one of the biggest and one of the most well-known. And you know what? That speaks volumes, right? Because most people want to be working with the company that is well known and has the statistics and is very well versed in it and what they're doing, and they know exactly what they're doing, right? Because again, it provides comfort, what's happening, and then you're able to relax a little bit more.
Well, especially at a time, where a family is going through the loss of a loved one, or at a time when a couple is considering their own end of life arrangements. Like these are delicate seasons of life, and why it's so vitally important for us that relationships are everything. That they're not just purchasing products. Our role is to be invited into their life at that moment, as I said earlier, to provide direction, a sense of calm in the midst of the storm. And we do that through, holding the hand of the family, walking them through options, which is different for everybody according to their needs, their wants, their budget, what's important to them, their traditions, their values. And so we really pride ourselves on taking the time with each individual family, because every life is unique, and therefore every remembrance should be unique.
Absolutely, I agree with that. So tell us a little bit about the pre-planning process, how that works with families, how they get that booked up, and kind of what to expect when they come in here and meet to do that process.
It's a great question, and just first of all, just to define what pre-planning is, essentially pre-planning one's wishes is just that, planning in advance of need. And so statistically across Canada, usually the age, if you will, at which point most people start to consider end-of-life planning and options is somewhere around 62 or older, but it doesn't have to be. You could be, I'm 46 and I've already pre-planned and pre-arranged my wishes, and I've certainly sat with others much younger than myself as well. But it's the idea of meeting with one of our pre-planning directors to do a few things, Ruth Ann. It's to record what our wishes are. A simple question like, would we be looking at traditional burial or cremation? And we know that in our industry, cremation has certainly been on the rise over the years as as the preferred method of disposition, right? Yeah. And so, having those discussions around what are your wishes? How do you wish to be remembered? What is important to you? What is of value to you? So that we can record all of that and make sure that we have the plan in place. And every plan is unique, right? Every individual is unique. We also, during that process, take down a lot of information, vital statistics information, because at the time when someone passes, a few things need to happen, not the least of which is we have to fill out a document, a legal document, that has all the vital statistical information of that individual. Well, we're able to capture all that information ahead of time as well, so that the client family can rest assured that their needs have been made known, recorded. We've recorded their vital statistics as well. And it just makes the process, when the time comes for at-need, a little bit easier on the children, on the family that's left behind. And then, of course, as a part of effective pre-planning is the option to prepay in advance as well. Now, you don't have to do that. You're not obligated to. You could certainly pre-plan all of your wishes and just simply have it recorded without paying in advance. But there are a lot of advantages of prepaying as well. The first of which is you immediately lock in a guaranteed funeral contract. And that's important because like any other business, like any other industry, costs, inflationary costs over time go up.
Yeah, we know that's true.
Isn't that true, right?
True.
And it's no different in our industry. What a funeral cost 25 years ago is a lot different than what it costs today.
Yes.
And that's just a reality of life. But the advantage of prepaying is locking in that guaranteed funeral contract, so it protects against inflationary costs. And so someone may pre-plan and prepay today. That means they lock in today's current prices. And even if it's 20 years from now that they pass away, they won't pay more than what they have paid at this. It locks in that rate. And then the other advantage is the vast amount of payment options that come with that. You know, whether that's whether they want to pay it all right up front, or whether they want to do that over the course of a year or 3 years or 5 years or 15 years. There's all kinds of different opportunities to meet every need, every budget. And those are insured contracts. And so what that means is they're guaranteed. If somebody were to pre-plan everything, and let's say that individual was on a 5-year payment plan. So each month they're making payments towards that funeral.
Yep.
And let's say we're saying, you know, God forbid, in year 3 of that 5-year payment plan, they pass away. Well, the good news for the family is that contract is paid in full, even though they didn't fulfill all of the payments, and that's because it is insured. So a lot of advantages around that. And so, you know, in our seminars, in our presentations we we take opportunity to educate the community on these options, because for a lot of years, I think conversations around death and dying and bereavement, they were kind of in the shadows, right? Taboo.
Yes.
I don't really enjoy talking about that.
Yes.
And part of our job as educators is to bring those conversations into the light.
That's really good. And you know what? I was aware that if you were to purchase and pay in full, like you would have that rate, it wouldn't go up. But you know what? I did not know that it was insured.
Yes.
That is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this, that when we talk about payment plan opportunities, an individual who is, let's say, 89 years old and prepaying, well, they would be a little bit more limited on options for payment plan, as opposed to somebody who is 50 years old that may have an option for payments over 20 years if they would like. Again, fully insured.
Yes.
So the idea behind it is every family, every individual is completely unique in their needs and wishes and budget, which is a very important consideration.
Yep.
And so we work uniquely with each family. And you mentioned about the process. It's a very simple process. We have some of the funeral directors on our staff. They are pre-planning directors, so they're dedicated to pre-planning. And you can call our funeral home. You can book online to sit with one of our pre-planners, no obligation, to simply go over your options, understand what they are. And they will work with the client family at a pace that is most appropriate to them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And just while you're saying this, I'm thinking this. I know for myself, doing a pre-planning would make sense, because my husband and I have a different idea of kind of what we want to do when we pass away, right? Like,
and that's not uncommon.
And that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
And like, I want to be buried, he wants to be cremated, right?
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, it depends on who goes first. We get to choose, right? And my parents, so my mom is she wants to donate her body to science, right?
Yes,
like she wants to donate her body,
Yeah.
and my dad is like, I don't want you to donate your body. Like, so
Right?
you know what? If you come in and you pre-plan, you can get that stuff written down.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, you might want to do something different, but we already saw the pre-planner.
That is true. That is true. At least we get down on paper what that individual's wishes are, right? And you bring up a good point though, Ruth Ann, because just these conversations, right? They're different for every family.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you and your husband have even talked about this at this stage of life, because these types of conversations, the truth is they can be uncomfortable. In fact, I mentioned as a part of Arbor Memorial a few years ago, we did a national survey on the theme of legacy and how Canadians over time, how our definition of legacy has maybe changed over the years. As a part of that survey, believe it or not, 92% of Canadians said that they agree that it is important and a good thing to have these conversations ahead of time.
Yes,
of what one's wishes are. 92% said that that's a good idea, but only 43% of all those surveyed have actually taken that step of having those conversations. And so
Yeah,
you see there's
I
this
believe that.
obvious disconnect, right? So generally people are saying, yeah, we should talk about those things. That's important to know. It's important that we understand for when that time comes. But then there's this huge disconnect of less than 50% have actually taken that step. And there's probably many reasons for that, uncomfortable conversations, whatever it may be. But again, for us, this is why we provide those seminars, those lunch and learns to help facilitate those conversations. Because, I found, you've heard the expression before that sometimes the anticipation of something is worse than the reality.
Yeah.
And what we found is when we start having those conversations, it's not as bad as we think, It's suddenly we understand what our parents' wishes are. We can talk openly about it. And it provides a sense of peace of mind and clarity, which is a gift.
Yeah, and you know what, those statistics are interesting, and I believe that they're extremely accurate, and I think it has a lot to do with people's personalities as well, right? Like there's things that we know that we will pass one day, and we know that we need to do something and prepare and talk about it and stuff like that. But depending on someone's personality, it can be very different. Like I can talk about that kind of stuff. I grew up in a home, my dad's a pastor, you know what I mean? So I grew up going to funerals, and that was very much a part of our life. I'm comfortable with that. And I'm into like making lists and being prepared and all that kind of stuff. So I talk to my husband, hey, one day, if you pass before me, this is what I'm going to do, or hey, this is what we could, and I say, well, what about if I pass? And he has been like, don't want to talk about
I don't want to
passing.
talk about it. Yeah.
He'll talk about him passing. He will not talk about me passing.
Yeah,
and it's like a thing. It's like a thing for him. And I
Sure.
said one time, like, what? Why don't you want to talk about that? And he goes, because we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just a different personality type of thing.
I think it's because he can't imagine life without you. That's
That
why he
better
doesn't
be
want
what it is.
No, it's so true though, Ruth, and you're right. It's a different type of conversation depending on your personality, your background.
Yeah.
There's so much that feeds into that, and it could be a fear of the inevitable. Like as you said, the fact is, as human beings, all of us at one point or another will pass away.
Yep.
That's a reality that we know up here, but we don't. That doesn't always translate into comfortable conversations, right? So again, we just provide time and space in that process to facilitate a way to have those conversations openly, honestly. And what we have found is every time we meet with a client, but even more than that, with families having those conversations, suddenly it becomes an opportunity for a greater sense of connectedness with the family, understanding. The children start to have a feeling of, okay, we know that when that time comes, we know what mom and dad's wishes are. I mentioned I'm a funeral director, and for a lot of years, I would sit with families on an at-need level. So a death has occurred, families coming in to make arrangements. And there was always such a stark difference in sitting with a family where those conversations had never happened, where nothing had been pre-planned or looked after, where children are making decisions at an emotionally charged time, hoping that they're making the right decisions that mom would have wanted or dad would have wanted, right, together. And, again, I'm there as the funeral director to provide options and guidance on that. But the difference from when I've sat with families at the time of need, where the children come in, for example, and everything was prearranged and pre-planned, not that it makes it easier in the sense of they're obviously still grieving. They've just lost a parent. There's this sense of understanding. We are so glad that mom looked after this ahead of time, or dad, because we're just simply able to follow through with what their wishes are, right? And in the midst of the pain and the grief, it provides a sense of a little bit of lightness and ease, knowing that those decisions were made ahead of time.
Yes, and especially talking together with the family. I mean, they say weddings and funerals are going to be the time when there's going to be the most drama, I guess, or family quarrels and things like that. And I think that's because both of those times your emotions are running so high. Right?
Isn't that true?
But if you are having this conversation, it's kind of like, it's not a surprise that instead of the oldest brother being in charge of everything, it's actually the middle child, and The reason is
Right.
because he's a business person. And they
Yes.
thought that would be best, and they've already had time and they already knew that that was going to happen instead of all of a sudden finding out at the same time that your parent has passed.
Yeah.
And now there's a sibling thing going on as well, right?
Right.
You already know what's going on. And I can see that making an absolute world of difference.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important as a part of the pre-planning process to be including all
Yeah.
of those. If I'm sitting with a couple, like an older couple, and they're making their pre-arrangements, I will ask them, have you spoken with your children about this?
Yeah.
Please make sure you do, because it's a family conversation. To your point of protecting against all of those potential issues down the road.
That's right.
If all of that is known ahead of time and discussed openly, it makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about the difference with the being pre-planned and then also when it's not pre-planned or something happens suddenly. Can you talk a little bit more about the process when it's an unexpected passing?
Unexpected meaning nothing's been pre-planned ahead of time,
Either
or
nothing's been
the death
pre-planned
wasn't expected
or
itself.
the death wasn't
Yeah.
expected itself, because
Sure.
I feel like that is a whole different dynamic.
Yes.
Altogether. I mean, if your parents are 90 and they've lived a great life and you knew then, and you were just kind of waiting and you're glad that they're with the Lord now, and that's one thing, right? But to get a phone call, hey, my spouse has
Sure.
been in a car accident, my
Yeah.
life has changed completely, and we didn't have any plans.
Yes, yeah. Well, and certainly we sadly many times see that quite often in what we do day in and day out, that unexpected or tragic passing of a loved one. It stops your world, doesn't it? That's the reality. Life as we know it in that moment instantly changes. And of course, along with that comes all kinds of grief, of confusion. It's not uncommon for feeling like, am I out of my mind? Am I going crazy? I don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
It's a sense of just total loss. What do I do? Where do I go? So in those situations, the important thing to know is obviously depending on the circumstance, the situation, where and when the death happened, there's different protocols of what immediately would take place, whether that's having to call, 911 or the police or whatever it may be. But even in situations where somebody is in a, maybe retirement home and, they're not expected to pass, but, they pass away and it's a shock. There are protocols that retirement home would have in place, and we're there to guide the family on that. So, our staff is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Oh,
so
that's
whether
amazing.
it's in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, when our phone rings, we answer. We go out, no matter what time it is, to the place of death, whether that is the hospice or the nursing home, or in those tragic circumstances, wherever that may lead us, and to transfer their loved one into our care. And then in that moment, we will, as I said earlier, this idea of holding the hand of the family and guiding them.
Yeah.
Our role in that moment, in the midst of all of that confusion and turmoil and grief, is to simply come alongside and guide them step by step of what to expect, what's going to happen, setting the appointment, reminding them
of the appointment.
Absolutely,
That's
yes.
really good. Yes.
And then at a certain point, they would sit with someone like myself, one of our funeral directors, to start that process of arranging for whatever their wishes are going to be for their loved one. And everybody engages that situation a little bit differently. And so our job as a funeral director is to be, I often say, like a chameleon, right? To change and adapt to meet the needs of that particular family at the pace that they want to make these decisions. And our role is just simply to guide them, help navigate those decisions, showing them all of their options, allowing them time and space to talk as a family. And we consider that a sacred honor, truly. And that's our role as funeral directors, funeral professionals.
I love that you're available like 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. That is something that I didn't know. And, when you do go through, whether it's a tragedy or even just the phone call, like you said, from a nursing home, that was kind of a little bit unexpected. I think that time stops mattering. You know what I mean? And you're not really, like you said, in the headspace of what's going on. You know, you hear
Yeah.
about people they're not eating, they're not sleeping. So to pick up a phone and dial you guys at 3, 4 in the morning would make total sense for somebody who is at the time, like you said, not in their own body.
Yeah, and
right?
there's helps at that time as well, whether it's a tragic situation where, you know, EMS and police are involved, whether it's an unexpected passing at a nursing home and it's nursing staff that are involved. There's guidance in those moments to let the family know of calls they need to make, one of which would be the funeral home.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of guiding. We guide the families. But, you know, even with unexpected, you know, you mentioned unexpected deaths, I think sometimes what I've grown to realize over my 15 years now in funeral service is that even in those situations where, say, a parent is in long-term care, a nursing home, or they're chronically sick for a long period of time, what I found is, as much as we often think we're prepared,
Yeah.
or we know where this inevitably is going,
Yeah.
still when the moment happens, even if mom is 90 years old, in that moment, there's still a sense of a bit of shock, a bit of, you know, a sense of, although maybe it's a mixture of feelings, there's maybe a bit of a relief or they're at peace now,
Yeah.
but also mixed still with my life has changed, right?
Yeah.
My mom's no longer here. And so even in those situations, there's that sense of unexpectedness that still comes with that fogginess of decision making and what do I need to do? And that's, you know, we're simply there to guide at that time.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, I actually had a friend who his father's recently passed away, and he came here, and he was here at your funeral home, and I had talked to him, and he said, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to be meeting you and doing a podcast," and he said, "Oh my goodness, Roseanne," he said, "I don't even know what I would have done without them." He goes, "They thought of things that I had no idea about." And he said, "You guys had like a list and stuff that you needed to do, and at times that you needed to do it, and you reminded him." And I mean, he was the one who was in charge of everything, right? So in charge of the estate, in charge of all of it.
Large responsibility.
A very large responsibility. And so he talked about like identity theft, right? And him and I were talking a little bit about that, and that was something that I didn't know. And he did say like there's a time limit after someone passes, like there's things that need to be done to protect from that identity theft. So what are some of can you talk a little bit about that? Because we are seeing a lot of identity theft, and people don't think about that, especially, I mean, that would be the last thing. I was blown away when he brought it up to me.
Yeah, sure. Sadly, it's a reality, right? That the world we live in today, unfortunately, when people pass away, there have been many instances where their identities, their social insurance numbers, or, you know, the advancement of scammers today is just, it's mind-boggling, right?
Unbelievable.
And so one of the things that we provide as a service to families is a very robust aftercare program. We call it our Aftercare program.
Yes.
So what that means is after the funeral's done, or the celebration of life, the burial, the cremation, whatever the family has chosen, once that has been completed, we sit with the executor. As the situation with this person you mentioned, it sounds like they were the executor of their loved one's estate. A lot of responsibility.
A lot of
right?
responsibility,
And
yes.
so in our aftercare program, we sit with the executor, or, you know, the family, and we go through a detailed checklist guiding them through all of the decisions and considerations that they need to be looking after over the course of the next 8 months to a year, which is the typical time frame it takes for your average estate to close, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so we provide all of that guidance, one of which is, you mentioned identity theft. We, as a part of that program, on behalf of the family, we contact, Equifax and TransUnion immediately. We do all of those cancellations to make them aware of the passing, so that it immediately puts a stop to any chance of their loved one's identity being stolen. So we do that immediately within 10 days of their passing.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, like any other industry, like any other business, when families use our services and it's been a meaningful experience, it touches our hearts. That's what we're here for. You know, we have often found a lot of responses we've got back from families, whether it's on Google reviews or whatever it may be. Oftentimes, by far, the most often mentioned service that they're thankful for or grateful for is that aftercare program, just because of how detailed and how robust it is. And we really view it through the lens of it's our commitment to ongoing support and follow-up. So in other words, we're not just here for the funeral or the celebration of life, and then once that's done, our job is done. No, we believe in ongoing relationship with that family, support, follow-up, whatever they may need.
And that's excellent because, like you said, it is about 8 months to a year, possibly even longer.
Yes, some of the complicated estates for sure can be longer than a year.
Absolutely. Yeah, complicated estates or complicated family situations can make that go on for years.
Yeah, that's very true.
Which is why pre-planning is important, because then that won't happen. But what are some other aftercare? So we talked about identity fraud. What are some other things in your aftercare program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will guide the family, the executor or the surviving spouse, whoever it may be. We will guide them through applying for whatever benefits they are entitled to. Okay. For example, anybody that passes away that's a Canadian citizen that has had a working career where they've paid into CPP over the years, they are entitled to what's called the Canadian Death Benefit, which is a one-time lump sum payment of up to $2,500. Okay. So we make all of those applications on behalf of the family so that they don't have to worry about that. Also, if there is a surviving spouse and if that spouse is entitled to what's called survivor pension, we will make all the applications for that. If there's children, young children, or children who are still in school, and there's children's benefits available, again, we'll make all of those applications. So all of the government, entitlements that a family would be entitled to, we make them aware of, we apply for on their behalf. But it really doesn't stop there. I mentioned the checklist. We will go through in detail asking the executor questions like, did their loved one have any life insurance policies? Did they, in their working career? In Windsor, we deal with the big three a lot, right? Chrysler, GM, and Ford. And oftentimes we will make application to those companies because, Dad, he was retired, but he worked 30 years at Ford. Well, he is probably entitled to a death benefit through the company that we make application to. And a lot of times for families, it's these aha moments. So I didn't even realize that this was there or available. And that list goes so detailed, Ruth Ann, that we'll get into conversations about if there's pets that we need to look at pet adoption, or is there real estate that needs to be dealt with, whatever it may be. And so families have found that to be just a tremendous support for an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. And that you do all that paperwork is wonderful because they're already doing so much with the estate and the lawyers and all that kind of stuff to have all the rest of that. I mean, mind-boggling. So that you guys do that, that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
we're very proud of the aftercare program. And like I said, it's by far one of the most often mentioned services where families say, I was so appreciative of that, right?
Yeah,
and that's very meaningful.
Like my friend, that's exactly what he had to say about it.
Right.
So as we just wrap this up here, is there anything else that you would like to touch on or talk about that you think maybe we've missed?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot, but no, it's for those watching. I thank you for watching, and these types of conversations are so important. I know, as I mentioned myself, my own parents, they're from the Boomer generation, and that really, they like to think of themselves as the greatest generation ever. I don't know, it's debatable, but the reality is, that generation is at a stage and season in their life where these conversations around end of life are important. And for folks like me, who are the children of those boomers, being able to facilitate discussions, talking with mom and dad, these are excellent opportunities to just ensure that everything is openly communicated so that when that time comes down the road, that we have the confidence that we're simply able to follow through with what mom and dad would have wanted. So important. And I mentioned, if you would like more information on that, we do have our seminar presentation coming up in May, the 26th of May. You can see that on windsorchapel.com to register. And we do these quite often throughout the year. And they've been well received by our community in having these conversations around end of life, legacy planning, legacy thinking. And so we'd love to have you be a part of that.
Well, that is wonderful. And thank you so much for your time and all of your information and education.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And definitely, if you're looking to kind of pursue this and get more information, give Scott a call here. Or
Yeah, you can call us here at Windsor Chapel. Our phone number, like I said, is it's always on 519-253-7236. And Craig Erickson is our manager of this beautiful location. I know Craig would welcome a conversation with anybody or myself. I would love to do that.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
All right, and have a great day.